Well, hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. And I have big news for this episode and for hopefully for all episodes going forward. We have a co-host. Say hi, Rachel.
Hello.
This is Rachel Jameson, and she has been a guest on the podcast before. I think it was way back, like 3 or 4 years ago. And it was like episode 45 or something. Way back when. Yeah. And we learned a little bit about her and her little urban homestead at the time back then, which you still have, right?
Yes,
you've expanded into.
That's where we live.
Things.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But why don't you take a minute and just kind of reintroduce yourself just for a couple minutes here and tell us kind of how you got into homesteading and a little bit about your homestead.
Okay. Well, I grew up a city girl, and when I say city, up here in northern Michigan, a city isn't Chicago or anything, but I was in the city on a little lot, and my parents, we moved a lot. And so my parents never put roots down, and we didn't have any garden. We didn't even really have green grass. And it was just always my dream to farm and have a homestead. I don't know where it came from. Maybe it came from Laura Ingalls. I've always loved Laura Ingalls, and I shared that love with my kids. But as I got older and we stayed put, we started adventuring into homesteading. And my husband actually grew up on a small, I don't know if I would say it was a farm. He had 2 acres, but they had animals, and his mom and dad did everything. I mean, it was just amazing to me. They made cheese, and they had an orchard, and they had a garden, and they cured their own meat, and they had a cellar. And I just thought that it was just amazing. And so my mother-in-law took me under her wing and started teaching me how to can. And my father-in-law started teaching me how to garden, and a fire was lit and there was no turning back. I just love it. So I've been doing this now. I think our first tomato came to us. Somebody gave us a bunch of tomatoes that they were throwing out from a store, tomato plants. And I planted tomato plants. And that was when I think my youngest daughter was maybe 1 year old, or my oldest daughter was a year old. And so that started that. And I, of course, had so many tomatoes, I didn't know what to do with them. So then I had to learn how to can. It's kind of like if you give a mouse a cookie, well, if you gave a homesteader a tomato.
Yeah, right.
Or beginning homesteader tomato, and then, chickens. And so here I am. And along the way, we went from garden traditionally with chemicals and everything, which is how my father-in-law gardened, because he was a child of the Depression. Mm-hmm. My health took a bad turn, and so we started doing everything organically. So I had to learn everything all over again.
Yeah.
Just very differently. And so that just became our passion. And for a while my husband was burned out on it, because this was how he grew up. But now he loves it as much as I do. And he's actually, he's more into the flowers and making the yard look pretty.
Oh, wow.
Which is funny, because it's, not typically how you would think of the male part of this. And he loves riding his tractor now that we have a tractor. But yeah, I grow the vegetables and fruit, and he does the flowers, and he's been planting out at our acreage, because here in town, we have 1/3 of an acre where it's mostly full of fruit. And we have fruit trees. We have three apple trees and 3 mulberry trees and raspberries, and a very large garden, as large as you can have here, which is full. And then we purchased 20 acres in 2020. And it was like a dream come true for us. We've been dreaming of it for years. And so we finally decided to do that. And so we are working on that and planted a bunch of trees. And it was a piece of property that needed a lot of work. Loggers had come in and left a big mess. And so my husband is enjoying his tractor time.
Yeah. Well, I've seen pictures of it. It looks great. I mean, it looks like it's pretty together.
Yeah, it's been a lot of work, but he's enjoying the tractor. We've cleared all the old brush, and logs that they left. It was actually kind of a fire hazard, and he's put them in hills, and we're burying them and turning them into hugelkultur mounds.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then he's planting those rows because they were full of blackberries with just these horrible thorns. And I could walk through even with my Carhartts on, and you get caught with those things. I mean, it was bad. We had acres of them. So he did a bunch of research on different things to get them down, and one of them was rye. So he's planted a bunch of rye down through those lanes, and it's worked.
Wow. Yeah, that's great.
I was skeptical, but we have not had much of the blackberries return in the lanes. So,
well, one of the reasons I wanted you to do this podcast with me is because you do have a passion for homesteading. I see it. You've been an admin in our Facebook group, the Homestead Front Porch Facebook group, for years, almost since the beginning. I think just a few months into it, you became an admin in there, and you've just always been real helpful in helping people out and just answering questions and things. So yeah, I just love your passion for homesteading and this whole movement, gardening, permaculture. You just seem to really be involved with all of it. And so I'm glad to have you on here. What are you doing like in the last week on your homestead?
Oh, well, this week, beans. So I'm in grow zone 5 here. Our property is grow zone 4. So 4B.
How far of a drive is it to your property?
35 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, one way.
So you're just kind of on the edge.
We go 1 week. We go once a week out there, and water everything and work out there, especially with gas prices.
Yeah.
My husband drives a diesel truck, so the gas prices are not fantastic for driving that back and forth.
No kidding.
But here we have beans and squash just coming like crazy. So today I'm keeping the beans in the refrigerator because I'm teaching a canning class on Saturday, which we're hoping to can the beans. But I got beans and squash, and I actually trimmed up my zucchini because I'm struggling with downy mildew. We had unusual humidity here.
Yeah.
So, and because I have to grow so close together with our property being so small, I sometimes struggle with moisture diseases. Mm-hmm. So, and my raspberries here are ripe, and one of my apple trees is starting to ripen. I have an early breed, and I lost the tag. I'm a really bad, poor excuse for a homesteader. I lost the tag, and I cannot remember the breed of the apple, but it's an early breed. So I have one tree that always ripens earlier. So that one's starting to turn red and ripen. I've been freezing local sweet cherries. We have lots of cherries here. And I've been experimenting with gluten-free sourdough. I have celiac disease. So, and gluten-free is just a totally different ball game when it comes to baking. And so
how's the sourdough working out for you? Is it working out for you?
My husband is very picky since he can have gluten. He's quite picky when I make gluten-free. Our house is 100% gluten-free now after an episode I had last year. So we are 100% gluten-free, and I thought he would never like it, but the loaf is gone. It was gone the next morning. So I think that's
passed the test, huh? Yeah. Okay. Yes. I tried my hand at sourdough here a few weeks ago, about a couple months ago, and I have so much on my plate that it's so hard for me to remember to do the feeding and the discarding and do all the things that, you have to do for sourdough. And I'm just horrible at it. I made a couple loaves of bread, and the next week I forgot to feed it for like 4 days in a row. And then it was like, okay, whatever. I gave up on it.
I know that happened to us. So I was in the process of making the starter, which I actually never made sourdough with regular bread. I used to make regular bread for my husband, but I never made it with sourdough. So this is my first experience with sourdough, period. And I failed 3 times trying to make the starter.
Yeah.
This time was going really good. And then I was like, oh no, it's the weekend. What do we do? Because we usually go out to the property, and we were going to spend the night out there this time. we were camping, and so I brought what we called Mr. Bubbles. Mr. Bubbles came with us.
But you're supposed to name the starter. Yes.
It's just like a baby. So
it requires as much care for sure.
They do. It seriously was like bringing a child with us. I was like, Mr. Bubbles. So, but it produced a different bread. We'll see. I actually really want to grow buckwheat, and I used buckwheat in it.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see.
Well, you have a lot going on, so it was a busy week for you. A lot of preserving, a lot of picking, a lot of harvesting stuff.
Yeah, August here. So our grow season is very short. It's May 31st to September 30th, and so right now is when everything is like,
yeah, same way here.
Yeah,
it's been going on for a couple of weeks here, but yeah, I've been just everything, and I was just a little bit ago, I'm in there canning pears because I picked a whole bunch. Me and my granddaughter went out there and picked like 100 pounds of pears, I think, something like that. And so we've been just canning and dehydrating, and it's been all day long.
That's what I've been doing. My dehydrators, I have 2 of them, thankfully. I found Marketplace is so amazing. I found a Excalibur last year.
Wow.
On Marketplace, and I already had one, and then I bought the second one, and those things have been going full tilt for like a month.
Oh yeah, it's a great way to preserve, and it's just a lot of work. It's just getting in the kitchen. It's not my favorite part of homesteading, but I like eating, so it's a necessary part of homesteading. So
people are always amazed to think they see all the pictures of me cooking and baking. They always think that I like it, and I actually hate it. That is the one thing, if I could hire somebody to do, I would hire a chef in a heartbeat.
I'm right there with you.
I would much rather be outside. I actually enjoy weeding. So I'm one of those weird people that enjoys weed. I would rather weed than cook.
I love planting and harvesting. The weeding part, it's better than the kitchen work for sure.
Yes, I find it relaxing. So that's what we've been doing. I think one of the things that I've been frustrated with, I want to find a better way and a faster way to chop and drop my comfrey. Mm-hmm. It just feels like it takes forever. And
how do you currently do it? Do you just pull a leaf at a time and do it that way, or what are you doing?
No, I usually just take scissors out there or like garden pruners and chop them off, and I just lay the leaves down, and I feel like. Do
you take the entire plant, or do you leave some of it?
I have the invasive kind, so I am not worried about taking that.
Okay, I'll tell you. I tell you what I do, and it works great. I use a saw. I use a hand saw. And I just grab the plant, and I just saw the stalks of the comfrey, and it comes off in just these big giant globs, and then I just lay it around, and I'll take the entire plant with a saw, and I just take a wood saw, just a wood hand saw, and just saw at it, and it'll just.
And you don't think it needs to be cut up smaller? Because I've heard people saying they're cutting.
One thing I've discovered about comfrey is as soon as it dries, it shrivels up so small. Right. And it dries really fast. And we lay it on the ground, it immediately kind of shrivels up within a couple of days, and then it still leaves a lot of room. Now I'm using it in a way where I'm not, I put it around things. I'm not just covering things with it. But no, I don't. And it goes away pretty fast. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I have unending amounts of it because I made the mistake when I bought it. I bought seeds, and I didn't research, and I didn't realize that I got the invasive kind. So it propagates through the roots and the seeds.
And the seeds, yeah.
Yes. And so I try to deadhead it whenever the flowers come. I try to take off the flowers so it doesn't go to seed, but that beast is out of the bottle. Yeah.
I have the Balking 14, so I don't have to worry about the seeds.
Right.
And I tell you what, I will plant it right along the edge of a path in my garden, and I just don't have to worry about it even crawling into the path, which is nice. But that's a whole nother rabbit hole we can get into as far as.
We could one of these days, right? But anyways, so that's I'm trying to streamline things so that my life is a little bit less busy.
Well, it sounds like you got just as much going on as me, because that's what it's been for me. It's been we harvested cabbage and that was last week, I guess, and I put all that up. That was a lot of work. And then it's been the pears were yesterday. Old peppers, I did a lot of banana peppers, and I don't know, it's just been everything. I've been bringing so much stuff in and putting it in jars and sticking it in the canner like right and left. It's been crazy.
Right. Fermenting.
But I would like to, I want to have a topic to discuss today, so we don't just spend the whole episode talking about our homestead. But I thought what we talk about is something we're both dealing with a little bit, and that is building a drought resilient homestead. Now, it sounds like a lot of things you're doing, a lot of things I'm doing have helped a little bit with the drought. Maybe we can talk about things we can do better. But what kind of things are there, do you think that, and we'll just go down a list because there's a lot of things you can do to make your homestead more drought resilient, because it's a big problem. Now, a lot of people struggle with this every year, but you and I live in an areas where it's just not usually this bad. Usually here in Indiana, where I'm at, in Michigan, where you're at, that's not a huge problem. We might go a couple weeks without rain, but it's usually not several weeks. So some people might listen to this and kind of laugh because they deal with this every year, but for us, it's kind of new. And I've noticed a lot of the things that I've done on my property because of permaculture helped me get through a lot of that. But then I also see some things I definitely need to do better or even change also. So when you think of building, let's start with the garden. When you think about making your garden more drought resilient, where do you start?
For me, I think of the soil.
Yeah.
I mean, your soil structure here in Michigan, I live on top of a great big sand dune.
Yeah.
So improving my soil has been we've lived here for almost 13 years, has been a 13-year process to go from sand to dark, nice soil. Yeah. So improving your soil, I think, what is it? Joel calls it the carbonaceous diaper, making your just so it will hold that moisture.
Yep.
And of course, there's a lot of ways to do that.
Yeah, just organic matter, a lot of organic matter in your soil breaking down, getting that soil, that web life going on in there, really building it up. And you're right, it becomes almost like a sponge. And and the thing is, sandy soil where you're at, or you go down south, a lot of times clay soil is just as big of a problem because you get the runoff. Your water hits and just goes away. It doesn't absorb. So yeah, having a good, healthy, rich, organic, rich soil, I think that's exactly right. And then that takes a little bit of time to create that. But some of the ways you can get there, mulch, I find, is a good way to get, is a good player in that. When you cover your soil and keep it does a lot of things. It keeps it cool. It invites the organisms under that mulch in the soil to come in there and really do their work. I mean, worms and all the other organisms, mycelium and everything else in there doing its thing. And so it'll do a lot to repair soil and make it better soil. You came across, in a book you're reading, you came across another thing you can amend soil with that actually helps with that you was telling me about.
Biochar?
Yeah, the biochar.
Yeah, I actually also, I'm really good friends with a guy, and Baker's Green Acres. They do a lot of stuff with permaculture. Well, not so much permaculture, but regenerative agriculture.
Yeah.
And he makes large amounts. He's got a huge biochar maker, and which I don't have. I'm a little homesteader. But one of my friends that's also my mentor also started getting into biochar. And that's when I was reinterested in it, because he actually does it at home.
Yeah.
And I don't have to have this huge machine. But biochar actually, you make it using almost no oxygen. So he makes his in a Dutch oven in his wood stove. And but they've actually done studies at MSU. They've done several studies on it, and it increases the soil's ability to absorb the moisture.
Is it because of the porous nature, because the little holes in the I think that's it. And then on top of that, it also helps retain the nutrients. And I'm not sure, I'm not as sciencey as I would like to be, and I don't remember all the right verbiage like my friends do, but I believe it has to do with too, it helps the soil actually have access to the vitamins and nutrients that are in the soil that are already there, but sometimes they just can't get to. You can't take it up.
And so it decreases the need for fertilizers, but the moisture aspect of it is, I mean, the topic we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I've read a little bit about biochar and doing. I've never actually practiced it or put it in my soil, but yeah, I've read a little bit about it and thought it might be something good to look into as far as adding it to my soil. I just see a lot of benefits, that I hear all the benefits of it.
And I feel like, sometimes I wonder, are we being too sciencey about it? Because I know that, I believe they got the idea from Native Americans or even other cultures where they probably just used it in a fire. They made it in a fire pit, and we're making it a lot more sciencey by putting it in these big biochar makers and everything. Sometimes we overcomplicate things is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know if it needs to be that complicated, but yeah.
Yeah. I find that works really well. Like I said, I think that the mulch on top of it, putting the organic matter into your soil, maybe using biochar if you go down that road, all these things improve your soil. I think the mulch goes a step beyond just changing the soil structure though, and also shades the soil, helps it with, prevent evaporation of the water in the soil. But now when I say mulch, I mean, I think of a lot of different ways, because I use a few different kinds of mulch on my property. Like I have some wood chip mulch. I use straw in some places, but I also do a lot with the living mulch. And I find that does a really good job of, helping the soil stay moist around. I've got like comfrey that we were talking about. I've got it around trees. I wouldn't put the invasive kind like that, but Russian.
No, I wouldn't wish this on anybody.
Russian varieties around the trees are nice, and it stays right there. And some of the trees I have, I mean, they didn't struggle at all with that around them. They it seemed like I didn't even water those trees through the drought we've had. So I think it does a lot to help those big broad leaves hanging over, really help it with the moisture retention in the soil. So yeah, those are definitely some ways. But I think even creating just microclimates is another way to, and again, that would be a microclimate in a sense. I mean, you're cooling the soil around a tree, but even if you created like shade barriers for things, I think about how hard it is to grow leafy vegetables like lettuce and things in heat and drought.
Right.
You couldn't do it unless you created some kind of if you planted it somewhere in a microclimate where it wasn't getting most of the day sun, probably. To help it with that water retention. So things like that.
In my own garden this year, what I did, I actually bought some shade cloth because I like lettuce. And lettuce, never happens in the summer here. Even though we're as far north as we are, we still get into the 90s. And if, lettuce doesn't like that.
Right.
So I bought shade cloth this year, which helped a lot. And then while I was waiting, I also planted pole beans, and my husband made a trellis system. And so while I was waiting for those pole beans to grow up, I had the shade cloth on, and I just took the shade cloth off a couple of weeks ago because the beans are starting to grow and shade over my lettuce.
I did basically the same thing. I planted some beans south of the lettuce.
Yeah. And I tend to do that with sunflowers as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I plant intensively to shade the soil, and that seems to really, really help. I have no choice, so I kind of stumbled upon that by accident. My mentor actually worked a lot with John Jeevons. I don't know if you're familiar with this book. He's got a book. It's called How to Grow More Vegetables Than You Ever Thought Possible. It's a very long title, but he works in third world countries, and they use a lot of practices because they don't have access to water or fertilizers. The book's really interesting. In fact, I brought it just so I could show you the cover. But he talks about growing intensively for that same reason. Here it is.
Okay.
He talks about growing intensively because it shades the soil.
Yeah. I grow intensively also, but when I first do that, it's never for the reason of shading the soil. It's always so I can keep weeds from coming up, because I figure if something's growing there, the weeds can't. So
that works too.
That's my main reason I do it. But yeah, it does do that. You're right. It shades the soil also. So it's a double benefit there for sure. Those are, I think, creating microclimates. And for years I've been practicing that on different things, because, you get a really hot streak of weather. I think it helps a ton. And again, though, it doesn't, when it's as hot and as dry as it has been for us, it doesn't fix the problem really. But when you do have to actually do the watering, you have to water, it helps that soil retain that moisture a lot longer. So
and planting some trees. And I know the I've lost it. My brain sometimes. I know that. Oh, have you used any swales at your property?
Well, I've got one that I made kind of makeshift. I was trying it out around a tree, kind of. I had the tree already planted, so I kind of just went on the downgrade of it, and I made a swale just to try it, and I wanted to see if it would, catching it there. I planted to the upgrade of it to where the moisture would kind of hold next to that tree. It's one tree I tried it with around it. I would like to do it on a larger scale. I don't have a lot of property to do big swales,
right.
But you can do it in a small area too. I seen that when we were gathering some links for this episode, I seen you shared a link for a 10th Acre Farm in our links, and you're probably thinking about her little swale system that she done on her original urban homestead. Is that what you were thinking of when you put that link in there? Yeah, she had a she actually had it to where the runoff on her roof went into a swell system that fed her yard, if I remember right.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I seen pictures of that. I thought it was amazing. I remember sharing those back when I first
it is amazing.
Yeah, they done a really good job of that. And they kind of ran it through the yard, and it was a swell design, but it collected the water from the roof, and then she planted right along that. It was a neat setup. They did a really good job.
It is a neat setup, especially for because you often think of swales with permaculture, you often think of them with large pieces of property, and she used it in a small piece of property. I mean, we're thinking about doing it our property that we have, because there's a lot of hills there, and we get some fast water going, and we'd like to slow it down. But here at our house, we were having issues. The way the road is graded when it comes by our house, a lot of water would dump down our driveway, come down our driveway, because we're on a hill. Our house is on like halfway down a hill, and that would hit the house. And we were having some issues with that. Yeah. And so my husband actually put a swale in, 2 swales in, one up. We watched the water, and one up by our garden to slow it down.
Just slow it down.
And then one up about halfway down the yard. Actually, he's got 3 now, because he dug one a few weeks ago. That one's probably more like a French drain though.
Yeah.
But the swale, and he dug the little swale, and then we have a garden, and one of our apple trees is in that swale and benefits from all that water that washes down our driveway.
Yeah, that's actually what I have is an apple tree, and the one I put in too. And it was for me, it was just kind of experiment. I didn't, in the past, it's nothing I needed, because here, like I said, we get enough rainfall normally that it's not an issue, but I just wanted to do it I like to experiment and try things and see how they work. So I did it just for kind of fun. But I seen a YouTube video, and I wish I could remember the video I saw here a while back, and it was an urban homestead, and they went into their backyard, and they completely just dug the swells all around the property. And then they filled it with organic matter and mulch and everything else, and then planted all along on both sides of this. And they actually used the mulch part of those swells as their paths through, and then they planted on each sides of it. Well, the way the swells are designed, they planted on the side that would normally the water would collect into. But it was amazing. And they were talking about how they just didn't need to water anymore ever, because so much water would absorb into those into that organic matter in the swell, which was their paths, and then kind of seep off into and then feed and water the plants. And they would go weeks without water, and they never had to water. And I thought that was a really
I can't imagine that. I mean, even where we're at in Michigan, where we get rain, we still have to water. That would be great.
Well, what was amazing is that the ground felt relatively flat, and it was urban property, and they completely just gutted the property. Like when they first done it, they went in, it just looked like just dirt, and then they dug the trenches, and then the way they did it, it really started from scratch, and it was a major job for sure. But from there on out, you have your paths, you have your swales, you have your plants, and everything working together, and it was kind of genius, really.
Did they use any hugel mounds?
Well, it kind of functions like a hugel mound, but
they weren't the woody bed or whatever.
But they weren't really planting in that organic matter. They were mostly using it for the absorption of the water and it draining back into the soil,
which is the opposite of what you usually see.
Yeah. So and it just if I find the video, I'll link it up, but I can't remember exactly what it was. But it was an urban homesteader. It was pretty smart. Just the idea that it was the way they designed it, so it would be really efficient on water. because it would just soak into all that organic matter and seep out. It was a good method. I thought it was.
So in all of your experimenting, have you ever done a hugel mound or a hugel culture bed?
Yes, I have one. And well, yes and no. It's not the traditional kind. It was kind of a raised bed that I did kind of the hugel culture. I filled, it up with, and then I mounded soil in the bed, but it does have wooden sides.
So how tall did it end up being?
Well, that was kind of because the beds themselves were pretty tall. So they were about 3 feet tall.
Okay.
So,
wow.
I mean, yeah. And there's only maybe 10 inches of soil that I added on the top, and everything else was organic matter. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we're trying to figure out how to do these. We did two last year.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't plant them, which we just ran out of time last year to plant them. And then they planted themselves full of just whatever. We've been out at our property. This is where we did this. These are probably 6 feet tall.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Well, that we had lots of logs.
Yeah.
Pine logs that were already like falling apart, and they weren't good for anything else. I mean, you couldn't have done anything with them.
Right.
And they planted themselves. And my husband went out there to go deer hunting, and the deer love them. The deer have been getting on top of them and eating the grass off of them.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but where our plans are to actually plant them. I actually I have put pumpkin seeds in some of them, but it's been so dry.
Yeah. I was going to ask you though, do you notice that those hugel mounds, do provide a little bit more moisture for the plants than, I mean, are they doing their job as far as watering?
I think in a normal year, the rain would have been enough, but out there we don't have power. We don't have water. All we have is a pond that, because of the drought, has dried up, and we were using a pond pump and a generator to get water out of that and fill 55-gallon barrels. And then my husband drives those to the orchard where I hand water everything.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
So we don't have a way to water the hugel mounds. Typically in a summer, we would get enough rain.
You think they would hold the moisture enough to where you probably wouldn't even have to water anything? At least
start it. Yeah, because some of them were pretty, the ones that were on the bottom, because they were kind of layered, it was pretty thick. You had to climb over the logs. Imagine climbing through the logs. It was like a big pile of pickup sticks.
How long have those been there? Have those been there?
The nearest we could figure out is they had been there for 3 or 4 years.
The hugel mounds, not the logs.
Oh, the hugel mounds?
Yeah.
We just put them in last fall.
Okay. So and
we're putting more in now, and we haven't had any rain, and we had a very low. So typically we get 10 to 14 feet of snow a year accumulation, not all at one time. And we hardly got any snow this year. So we've been just dry since last fall.
And also as those logs break down more, they become more absorbent, I would imagine.
Right. The ones on the bottom of the pickup stick pile were starting to absorb just from rains and stuff. So we'll see. I'm hoping, we're hoping to get water there at some point. It's on the list. You know how that is.
We'll just put rain on the list and we'll solve all of our problems.
Rain dances would be good, right? And
yeah, I told you about those too, didn't I? I told you if you just stay dancing until it rains, they work every time.
I feel bad for the people though. I mean, I don't want to complain because it's nothing like it is out west. I mean, the droughts out west are just absolutely horrible.
Right.
But here, I mean, I know that one of the things we wanted to talk about was rainwater collection. And for us this year, it would have done nothing. We got rain at the beginning of May, and we got our first rainfall last Sunday.
Yeah.
Since May.
I have some rainwater collection. I have two maybe 300 gallon or 275 gallon IBC totes. I have two, and I also have 255 gallon ones that collected off my house. Those two IBC totes collected off my barn roof, and then the barrels collected off my house. And I was out of water in about a week and a half.
Oh, wow.
When the drought started with those. So yeah, they did great. And they would do really good if you had a lot, because early in the spring, of course, we got plenty of rain. I probably could have filled up, thousands of gallons over time. But yeah, we were talking about things we could change. That's something I want to change on this property. I want to put in a lot more rainwater collection.
Right.
Because off my barn roof, I could just collect thousands of gallons.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. One rain event.
Yeah, you could fill up a lot of, and I thought about, I've seen some setups where people double stack IBC totes and have just a row of them and have them all hooked together. And I thought about something like that, along my barn. I think that would work pretty good. It'll be a little bit of work, but when I consider this year, I almost think it'd be worth it because I'm on city water and I was watering every other day, a lot of water. So I'm sure the bill has been, pretty high.
Well, and everything is going up with that too. Yeah. I know for us, using the generator out at the property to water. And then here, we do still water here. And we actually are blessed. We live on a small lake, which is more like a big mucky pond. And we water from that. But the electric bill, from watering from that, we don't pay for the water, but the electric bill and anything you can do to do that.
Yeah, normally I'd have to water from the city water. I've always been able to use my rainwater collection on a normal year, but this is not a normal year for sure.
Yeah, it's dry in a lot of places, and of course not everywhere, but yeah.
But it has made me think about other things like drip irrigation too, because when I was watering, I'm using like a sprinkler system, like just one of them go back and forth sprinkler systems. It's not the best way to water. You waste a lot of water for one thing. And also it invites disease on your powdery mildew, things like that. It can really aggravate that and make it worse. Blight, it can cause blight. I mean, it can just really aggravate the situation when it comes to diseases.
Right. And when it's been as hot as it has been, half of it evaporates.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I try to do it in, early mornings or whatever, but.
So you're not able to use drip irrigation with what you have?
I could, but I'm just saying it's something I'm thinking about because I should probably do something like that because it'd be way more efficient use of the water. You'd use a lot less of it. Cause when I do it from the rainwater collection, I just run a hose and I go out there and hand water with the hose off the rainwater collection. It's not the most efficient way of that water. And it takes a lot of time too. So it's actually got me thinking about putting in drip irrigation, hooking it to the rainwater collection and using that water better. So I use less of it.
We were talking about putting up a system with rain barrels and timers and drip irrigation.
Yes.
Which would be, automation with being as busy as we both are sounds fantastic.
Yeah. I used to really enjoy spending all my time doing all that stuff, but then you just run out of time after a while.
You do. It's like, I love to weed, but we can't water with drip either because our water from our mucky pond, even though it's filtered 3 times before it gets to our sprinklers, it clogs up the sprinklers. There's so much sediment in it that we've tried a couple of times. We have to use big sprinklers, which, as you said, I end up, which I'm fighting now with diseases like downy mildew. And it's not ideal for sure. And so I would love to think of even here, because we are stuck here for a while until prices come down to build on our 20 acres. Even here, we would like to set up a system for rain catchment.
Well, it's definitely way more efficient use of the water. You'll use a lot less and actually get it to the base of the plant where it needs to be.
Right.
And I just think it would be a lot better. I would like to do something like that. So I see things I need to improve on, even though this was probably a worst case scenario year as far as the drought and the heat. Being prepared for something like that. If it's nice to think outside the box, kind of prepare for the worst case scenario. And I think to do that, it's more rainwater collection, drip irrigation, more mulch, more microclimates, really develop and continue to always work on that soil. Of course, there's so many other benefits to getting that soil better and better and better every year, getting a lot more organic matter in that, the biochar. You got me thinking I might want to try that.
Biochar, and I was thinking too that, I don't know if it actually helps though. That helps with nutrition more, the Ramia wood chips. But I think that even the water collection though also diverts the water to where it needs to go instead of just deluging one spot. Like, when your eaves, it just
Yeah. In town, it just gets wasted. If you live in town, like I do
Yeah.
on an urban homestead, it runs off to the street, goes into
Yeah.
the systems and flows away, and ends up
Right. Well,
a couple
and
miles down the road
here
to the river.
they do that here. And out west, I know they have huge problems with it getting diverted, and then they have flooding and everything. And then you have issues. And it actually, I think, is exacerbating the issue because the soil isn't absorbing it how it's supposed to. But here we have issues downtown because it washes off the street, and they have them going right into a river, which then goes right into the bay. And then we have problems with the water not being safe to swim in.
Yeah, it's that way here too, that they talk about. I mean, I seen a chart here in Indiana, and it was showing safe places to swim or eat the fish out of and stuff. And it's very limited because so much runoff goes into all these rivers.
And the earth is the perfect filter, and we're not using it. So collecting the rainwater so it goes to where the earth can filter it is definitely.
Yeah, we need to use it. If the world isn't going to use it right, all of us homesteaders need to start using it right, at least.
Yes, we need to be better stewards.
That's right. That's right. Well, I think that, I mean, I'm sure there's probably 100 other things we could talk about as far as things you could do to better make, to make your homestead more drought resilient. But those are the things I'm doing, you're doing, that we probably want to do better in some areas that do work. So I think that's pretty good. I think before we go, I think we ought to take a minute. What I'd like to do is with you and I hosting this, is think about like questions maybe that people are asking in a homestead front porch, or maybe questions that people send us and want an answer to. And actually, the only question I came up with this week that I thought would work good was the one I had on Facebook, because I don't know everything, right? I mean, I asked the question. I had all this cabbage. And I'm like, what do I do with all this? Because I was making sauerkraut and coleslaw and then putting some in salads. And I'm like, well, how do you preserve? How are people preserving it? And how are people using it? And stuff. And the people in the group came back with a lot of answers. And you even mentioned a couple things in there too. But yeah, I mean, I've always just done coleslaw and sauerkraut, which I love both of those things, especially sauerkraut. We love sauerkraut. We eat a lot of it. But then I felt like a total fool because I asked a question and someone says, well, you can freeze it. And I'm like, you can freeze cabbage? I didn't even know you could freeze it.
Cabbage rolls. Yummy.
Yeah, I was like, okay, so I'll be doing a lot of freezing now. So I put a lot of heads of cabbage in the freezer now. That's one thing.
Yeah, I know. My mentor actually puts them whole in his root cellar.
Yeah. I don't have a root cellar.
I don't either.
I have one that we have a basement that has what could be a root cellar in the back half of it, but it needs a little bit of work before it can get there. And it's something I think this winter I'm going to work on and try to get that one of them indoor projects.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of them. Like they keep the root on it and they tie them up by the root and hang them.
Okay, see that's great. Yeah. But even just freezing them, something I didn't even know. So I hear I'm canning everything, or putting stuff in the refrigerator, making stuff. And I'm like, oh man, this is just a lifesaver, just knowing that you could freeze them. So I had to chop a lot of the heads in half, but I got them in the freezer.
Do you ferment your sauerkraut, or do you use the vinegar method?
No, I ferment it. I just take the salt and crunch it in and let it set and do its thing. Yeah, it's so easy. Yeah,
the therapy of banging the sauerkraut.
Yeah, I actually make it right in the jars and just let it set, right in the mason jars and just do it that way, which is pretty cool.
We've always done it in 5-gallon buckets.
Yeah. That's, if you're making a lot of it, that's probably an easier, quicker way to do it. But then there was just all these suggestions as far as, like you said, the cabbage rolls, and then kimchi. Now I've never eaten kimchi.
Oh, it's spicy.
It's what?
It's usually spicy.
Is it? Okay. I don't really know how you even make it or what, but that's something I know that it's made from cabbage, but I don't know much about it. So I thought I might have to look into that.
Well, if you like spicy and you have peppers, I think you can probably make it milder.
Yeah, I was going to say, I like spicy. I don't know how much spicy likes me, but I mean, I can eat it, but then I pay for it later. Yeah, I mean, there's just all those, a lot of suggestions popping up in there. And I thought, so there's a lot of ways out there to use things that we may not think of, and you should reach out to other homesteaders because people just, they're into that stuff and they know what they're doing. And I was just, like I said, I've always been limited on what I was doing with it. And I thought, wow, there's all kinds of things.
You have a hydrator, right?
Yeah.
I have started, because I had see, just because I'm on the show does not mean that I do everything right.
Mhm.
So I had a whole batch of my brassicas, my cauliflower and my broccoli, not flour. And I think it's just the heat. So all I have is these beautiful leaves, just beautiful, tons of leaves. And so I've been cutting those down and taking the vein out and putting them in the dehydrator. And then I powder them and I add the green powder to smoothies all winter.
Oh,
they sell green powder for a lot of money on Amazon. So I'm making my own.
Maybe you should start selling yours and make
but so you can do that with your cabbage. You can dry it and then powder it.
Well, I normally don't have to worry about all this because I usually don't have near as good of a crop of cabbage. But this year I planted a lot because I always plant a lot, but then usually the cabbage moths just decimate me and everything. But this year I used row cover. And I had the best cabbage crop I've ever had. And it's so great. I mean, I had these gigantic heads of cabbage and all of them turned out. I didn't lose one single head of cabbage. And I did the same thing with my broccoli and my cauliflower. And I had the biggest crops I've ever had of those too. And so I had really good luck with the brassicas this year. So
the row cover is a game changer.
Yeah. And I didn't use it on those before and I should have. And I even knew that I should have, because I see what the problem is, of course, but I just thought, well, I'll get it.
Right.
You always try to battle.
Does your family eat out of your garden? Not just your wife, but your grandkids and stuff?
Oh yeah. I mean, certain things, they don't eat everything like I do, but yeah, they love the sweeter stuff, of course. Like my granddaughter's only like, she's 4 years old. She's out there helping me pick pears yesterday and she's eating, constantly eating pears.
Of course. I don't have a pear tree. Well, I have pear tree. None of my fruit trees out at our property are producing yet. And I do have pears out there, but we don't have one here. I miss, that would be good.
Yeah, I have 3 and they are amazing. They put off so many pears these last couple of years. It's just been crazy. I have 3 apple trees, 3 pear trees. I have a peach tree. I have 3 plum trees. I have a persimmon tree, a fig tree.
Wow. Are you guys zone 6
mulberry
maybe?
Trees. We're actually, we kind of border on 5B and 6A.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have 2 Chicago figs that I bring inside
I have one that I planted outside and I'm going to see what it does. It actually has 2 little figs on it and I just planted it this year. So I don't know what's going to happen. I
haven't gotten any figs yet. This is my 2nd year.
I bought this tree from Stark Brothers and it seems like it was a healthy tree.
They're good. That's where I bought almost all of my fruit trees was Stark. And I've only had one that I lost, which is normal.
Yeah. I actually brought in some, I actually have a pawpaw tree. I had 3 and 2 of them died, but I think I have to have 2 to get pawpaws. So I think I'm going to have to plant another one.
I was looking to see in the group if there's any more questions, but I really don't see.
Yeah, I think people we didn't make I think in the going forward, we'll just put the post out there and ask anybody if they have anything for the podcast.
And this is the crazy busy time of year for homesteaders. we're all just like,
yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I know I sure have been crazy busy. Yep.
It's like what's on fire and that's what you get done. Everything else pushed back.
I always see like in the groups, you see a whole bunch of interaction. You see people just wanting, because I think people get real antsy to get started early in the spring. So everybody's like all about homesteading then. As the year goes on, I think they get a little tired of it and they're like, okay, I'm ready to rip my garden out and be done with it for a couple months. And by the time snow's flying, they're ready to get back at it again.
That's how I am. Every September, I'm like, die. Yeah, and then every January, I'm like, what are we planning? What are we planting?
Yep. I'm the same way. I go through the same phases, but I mean, there's so much you can do with what you have on your property. And I don't think I ever make as good a use of the things I'm growing as what I need to. I mean, I could get so much more food preserved if I just did everything with it I was supposed to, for sure. And
with the water issue this year, it was just hard to know. I mean, I know people that had to pick choose what crops lived or died. And so, I mean, and that was, just all the things we talked about, trying to help because we know it'll happen again. We just don't know when. It cycles, we have dry
Yeah.
years and monsoon years, and it's just how it is.
Yeah. Now you had some, in closing, I kind of want to, if there's anything we wanted to share or whatever, of course, I want to kind of promote the Homestead Front Porch Facebook group. It's been a while since I really kind of pushed that, but we're starting to get a lot more active in there again. And, we just want the interaction to kind of pick up in there. So if you're a listener of this podcast, go be part of the official Facebook group for this podcast, which is the Homestead Front Porch Facebook group. And be glad to have you in there. And like I said, if there's any questions you want to post in there for the podcast, we're happy to answer them to the best of our ability anyway, on here on the podcast. And plus there's just so many helpful people in there. I mean, there's always people in there that can
It's a big group. It's a big group.
27,000 people in there right now. Yeah. It's doing pretty good. I see some really big homesteading groups out there, like over 100,000 people though. And that's amazing.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
There's some big ones out there. So it's not a thing that people are definitely interested in the subject for sure.
Yes, they are.
But that's something I wanted to say, and just check out the website, redemptionpermaculture.com. That's my website where I host the podcasts, and all. You can find the entire archive in there, plus a lot of blog posts I've written over the last couple of years in there. But it's pretty busy place with lots of information. So if you're looking for some information, you can check that out. Rachel, you had mentioned a few books. And I will get the links to those in the notes as well. Was there any, the one on, you mentioned one on, what's the one on biochar? That was the,
I don't actually have a book on that. It was, it's actually,
that was a video series, wasn't it?
Yes. It's my mentor, and he's only on Gab. He is, he's not Amish and he's not Mennonite, but he's plain.
Okay.
And, he and his family live 100% off grid. They don't have solar or anything. They live primitively in a yurt. And he is a phenomenal gardener. He's worked with John Jeevons and Elliot Coleman. And he is phenomenal. He's just really gifted, and he's a gifted teacher. And he has a great Gab channel where he's put a bunch of shorter videos. So they're not very long. They're usually like 6 to 12 minutes. And then they're instructional. And he just felt led to share his knowledge suddenly.
I'm not, is Gab something you have to sign up for? Can anyone just watch the videos?
No, you can just watch them. I mean, you won't be able to comment on them or anything, but I am not a member there, and I still go over there and watch his videos here and there.
We'll definitely have the link in the show notes then. So anybody wants to check that out, you can go watch those videos. Yeah, his name is Craig Schaff, and he has a farm here locally. And he grew for some of the top chefs here in our area, his vegetables. So okay, I see you have a book that you wanted to share, The Independent Farmstead.
I feel like that book is it's like a textbook. So I've read a lot of books, like Joel Salatin's books, and I've read Justin Rhodes' new book, and those are really, really good. This one's just like almost like a college level. They go really deep into detail, especially if you're just starting, because it helps you think through things before you put that building right there. Or and water, they have like 30 pages on water. Theirs is a lot of talking about pumps and stuff like that, so you actually would have to have like a well or whatever, but they have some off-grid stuff in there too without needing to use power. And it's just really I feel like it's really well written. And they have, I'm trying to remember the name of their.
I'll put a link. I'll put a link.
It's actually, the link is there. And when I changed the link to put a hyperlink, it just put about. Yeah,
I'll definitely, I'll definitely add it to the show notes.
They just have, and they were recently on Justin's show. Justin did 2 short vlog posts about them. And, they're just doing some neat stuff, but the book is very good, and I kind of hemmed and hawed about that one because it was expensive, but it was good. And
you're sharing some some blog posts on mini swales in an urban backyard also.
Yeah, that was that was the Permaculture Research Institute. They had
I love their website.
Yeah, they have a great website, which I really, really enjoy going there. I mean, you could drown yourself in websites, which I sometimes in the winter, this is what I do. But
me too.
and then of course we talked about it earlier, the 10th Acre Farm. I have a few books that I'm getting, probably won't get to till this winter, so I can't speak to them, but I have been working on reading a lot about silvopasture and which I think you could probably do on a small scale. You can.
Oh yeah, running animals through properties.
I planted hay trees or fodder trees here on my property on our small acreage in anticipation of getting rabbits.
I'm actually doing something similar to that. I built a quail tractor. And I've got my quail, my Coturnix quail in a tractor, and I run them around the trees and I run them around some of the plants. Nice. I let them just kind of do that thing. They eat a little bit of the grass.
Do they enjoy that?
They do great. They won't tear up the soil like a chicken, which is good when you're doing it the way I'm doing it. But yet they'll still leave behind all the good stuff, and it works out really great. And actually there's a whole bunch of benefits to it. I actually put a YouTube video up a while back because I find they're using less feed because one, they don't waste their feed as bad because even though they throw it out of their bowl onto the ground, they just eat it off the ground. When you got them in cages, they tend to throw it out and they can't get to it, and then also they're just eating some grass and bugs and things like that. And they're doing a lot to fertilize the ground. And I think since I started doing that this year, and I probably made, I don't know, 10 or 12 laps around the yard, around everything with that tractor. And I don't have a bunch in there. I think I have 10 in there. Well, I have a couple less now because I had a raccoon that got a hold of a couple. He dug underneath. He didn't get all the way in, but he was able to get his paws on a couple and rip he didn't kill him, but he tore him up a little bit. Well, he's no more, so he's not a problem. But we did take care of that situation. But yeah, even in town, in an urban homestead, you still have those kind of things that happen for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we have raccoons here. Yeah.
But you can definitely do that tractoring and moving through your pastures, so to speak, in an urban setting. It works the same way. And I've been trying to figure out ways to do that on a smaller scale. And quail seems to be a really good way to do it. Rabbits, I think, would be another good one. You would definitely have to keep up on the moving with rabbits because they could dig a hole. Or just wire the bottom so they can.
I think I would wire the bottom.
Yeah, I've
seen a couple of different designs. We're still in the research. The biggest issue is finding time to actually take care of rabbits. So we're still in the research of that. But I planted the trees, and I have the hybrid mulberry and the hybrid popple here. We didn't want the willow here because of rooting issues with our septic system and stuff. But we put those here, and I plan to coppice or pollard those continually, and then just chip those. And would chip those into the garden.
Yeah.
So it serves two purposes here, but the plan was to maybe feed the rabbits with them. And to me, that's kind of agroforestry, silvopasture on a mini scale.
you got those from Nick Ferguson, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. I'm in a group with him, and he was talking about having some of those available. He's a good guy.
They've been great. I have 18 of them out at our property, and I have 7 here, and then I gave a few away to friends. And I have not had one die.
It's real easy to, and this again, a whole rabbit hole we don't want to really go down, but it's real easy to think when you're thinking about putting beneficial trees on a property to kind of forget about those kind of trees and just always think about fruit trees and nut trees and things like that. But there's all these trees that they benefit your property in the way they can do good things for your soil, or they can do things for your livestock. And so you can think bigger than just food for us.
Well, and these hybrid breeds grow so fast that if you did want them to grow them, say for shade, to help with water and stuff like that, they do grow fairly quickly. And I mean, there's the coppicing and the pollarding. I mean, you can look over. That's what I've been delving into. And a lot of that information is lost because we stopped using it. But over in Europe, you can see a lot of how they do that. They use them even as hedgerows, even in smaller.
I wrote a blog post here a while back on them because I was doing a lot of research as well on that and I use my mulberry trees for that. And every year I take them things down to almost a stump. And every year, like the one I just did that to the one in my backyard, I took it down to it was about 4 foot tall and nothing but just a stump sticking up about 4 foot tall. And it's probably 20 feet tall and just crazy bushy right now. And I did that in the spring, it's just nuts.
Right. We have
so fast.
The mulberry trees that we have in the yard currently, before I planted the new ones, are wild ones that birds planted and we moved to where we wanted them. Well, I have one underneath the apple tree. We have an old apple tree and I keep cutting it back to the ground and it just keeps coming back. And I cut it back to the ground. It just keeps coming back.
It gets bigger and more sticks coming up though. Like the mulberry, it just keeps expanding and that's great.
And those new growth wood chips are actually the ones with the most, that's my friend Craig with the Gab page actually talks a lot about those. They just have the most nutrition in them. It's those new growth. So to chip those and put those on your garden.
Sure.
Yeah.
This year I actually didn't use a lot of wood chips in the garden, but I kind of just did a lot of paths with them because, like I said, I planted so intense in the actual garden beds. I didn't really need them in the garden beds.
I didn't have a little bit of straw. Access. It's been my frustration to not have access to wood chips. So that's part of the reason why my goal is to grow some wood chips.
I actually bought a bunch this year to my shame, and I don't like doing that. I'd rather just get them for free if I can, but I need.
That's one of the things we couldn't get up here this year. The weird rolling shortages. Yeah,
we didn't have that problem here, but I expanded my garden into the side yard. That's the pole barn property that we bought a couple years ago. And I actually planted in the ground there. So I made all these paths and everything. So I needed a lot of wood chips, way more than I had. So I had to buy some.
Wow. Yeah. That's one of the things speaking of clay, we have clay out at our property. And we know that wood chips would help dramatically. And so, but we do not have an industrial wood chipper. So I think we're going to have to try to get a chip drop or something to bring truckloads there.
I've got like a little 5 horsepower, wood chipper. And it sounds like it looks like it would do a lot better than it does. But if you put anything in there more than a couple inches to maybe 3 inches thick, it really bogs it down. It ain't as good as it should be. But it does all right for just doing the few trees I have here on the property, keeping them cleaned up. Sure. It's amazing how much wood it takes to make some mulch, because it's like you can feed so many limbs through that and it gives you this little pile of mulch. It's like, really?
I remember thinking when we did corn, because every couple of years I'll grow dent corn to make cornbread and everything else with, and you get that big pile of stalks and you think, this is going to make so much.
Nothing.
It takes forever. Like 4 hours later, all you've got is like this, little pile.
a bag of mulch. Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
All right. Yeah. Well, I think that pretty much covers it. Anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
I think that's it. It's been fun. And I feel honored to have been asked to be here with you.
It's been great having a co-host, and I hope we'll have you on for many, many, many more. And
I hope it keeps working out. I have enjoyed myself, and I look forward to the next topic.
We'll have to come up with the next one. We haven't really brainstormed that yet, but we'll definitely.
Or maybe somebody in the front porch, the homestead.
Maybe
this topic.
Maybe they can throw us some ideas. There's you have, like I said, there's a lot of things you do well that you've put a lot of research into, that if you have an idea on that, and I look forward to covering those topics, because I know you have a lot of knowledge. You've been doing this for a long time. You have a lot of knowledge about a few things. We can always learn more.
I've been doing the small scale stuff. I'm telling you, I'm learning a lot more about organize. One of the things that having a small homestead has helped with is we realize just how much you can do in a small homestead. And how much, when we get to the 20 acres, we really don't need to spread out that much. We're actually going to leave a considerable amount of it, probably 16 to 18 acres, just as property. And we have splits available. Our hopes are maybe in the future one of our kids will want to join or whatever. But we just realized we really, outside of having large animals, it doesn't take that much to to grow a lot.
And that's something I've been always saying on this podcast since the beginning. It's like, you just get started right where you're at, because it will amaze you just how much you can do right where you're at. And there was a time when I didn't think that. I mean, I used to think I couldn't homestead till I got me a big piece of land. And then I started doing it, and it's almost more than I can handle on this little piece of property.
I tell people all the time, I mean, this third of an acre wears me out.
Yeah.
I mean, and I actually could probably, if we were never going to buy the 20 acres and I just wanted to do everything here, I could plant more of it, and we could have meat rabbits, and we could have quail, and we could get chickens again, because we did have chickens. We don't have them right now because it's too hard with us going back and forth. But it can wear you out. It can wear you out.
I think that's my last piece of encouragement before we end this podcast is that, don't be afraid to start homesteading or waiting until you think you can do it somewhere else. If you're even in an apartment, there's little things you can start doing that are steps to where you can get a piece of property. But if you're on a city lot, no matter how big it is, there's things you can do. You can grow some food. There's just some things you can do, and definitely do some preserving and start to develop a little food security and some healthy eating habits and learning how to cook. We went through all these things before, but just get started right where you're at.
Yep. Grow where you're planted.
There you go. So, well, Rachel, thanks for joining me. And it's been great.
All right. It's been great.
And everybody else, happy homesteading, and God bless.